In a world where love can bloom in the most unexpected places, imagine a seemingly innocent romance that begins with shared glances across a sunlit classroom, only to spiral into a dark obsession. It was a relationship that started with gentle affection, one that seemed to promise warmth and companionship, but beneath the surface, a chilling dissent lurked. This is not just any story of romance, it is a haunting true crime tale that unveils the terrifying consequences when emotions go unchecked. As we dive into this mysterious account, we uncover how a simple connection between two teachers transformed from a source of joy into an obsessive entanglement, leading to a tragic end. Stay with us as we explore the unsettling transformation from love to obsession, offering not just a narrative, but a stark warning of the lurking dangers when passion turns perilous. Meeting the teachers at the heart of this enigmatic tale, we begin with Eliza Carter, a devoted English teacher known for her keen intellect and gentle demeanor. Eliza's classroom radiated warmth, filled with rows of students eager to listen to her articulate poetry recitations. Her passion for literature was contagious, igniting a love for words in the hearts of her pupils. On the other side of the school corridors was Mr. James Monroe, a charismatic history teacher with a flair for storytelling. His classes were a voyage through time, as he animatedly recounted tales of bygone eras, captivating his students with his dynamic teaching style. James was known for his quick wit and infectious laughter, traits that endeared him to all who crossed his path. It was within this vibrant academic setting, amidst the daily shuffle of lesson plans and student discussions, that Eliza and James's paths intertwine. Both shared an unyielding dedication to their students and an unspoken admiration for one another's teaching methods. This mutual respect formed the first seeds of an innocent connection. Their encounters in the teacher's lounge were marked by engaging conversations about literature and history, each exchange layered with a subtle undercurrent of intrigue. As their discussions grew deeper, so did their sincere appreciation for each other's passions, a bond that began to weave its way through the fabric of their daily interactions. Little did they know, this burgeoning friendship would become the foundation for a story that would soon shift into unforeseen dimensions. Their initial attraction blossomed under the subtle glow of shared passions and mutual respect. It started simply enough, with casual conversations over steaming cups of coffee in the break room, filled with a lively exchange of ideas on how best to inspire their students. Eliza and James found that their love for teaching was like a shimmering thread weaving through each dialogue. They both carried a deep appreciation for the art of storytelling. To James, history was not just dates and events, but a tapestry of human experiences. To Eliza, literature was a gateway to understanding the world. Their shared ideals drew them closer, like moths to a flame, revealing an innocent affection that flickered in their quiet smiles and lingering glances. After school hours, their dedication often led them to collaborate on school projects, creating a camaraderie rooted in a wholesome devotion to their students' success. These interactions, innocent and earnest, were filled with a respect that laid the groundwork for a connection that felt both natural and compelling. As they stood side by side, brainstorming for the annual school event, one could see the ease between them. It was in these moments that they began to find solace in each other's presence, an unspoken understanding that transcended words. For Eliza and James, this companionship was a rare treasure in the chaotic rhythm of school life, a gentle reminder of the joy that teaching brought to their souls. This mutual encouragement and shared respect ignited a warmth between them, fostering a bond that seemed to blossom effortlessly, marked by the simplicity of two kindred spirits discovering each other amidst the echoes of classroom laughter and the rustle of textbook pages. It was a budding affection that held the promise of something beautiful, a connection as pure and light as a spring morning, yet one that unknowingly teetered on the edge of a shadowed path ahead. Their blossoming romance unfolded like an intricate dance, a gentle waltz of emotions that arose from the roots of their initial friendship. Within the hallowed halls of academia, Eliza and James found themselves drawn to each other with a magnetic affection that was as unexpected as it was profound. It was during one of those languid afternoons, after the bustling energy of the school day had ebbed away, that they discovered a shared sanctuary in the quietude of the library. A place where they would often linger, engrossed in the delicate exchange of thoughts, surrounded by the comforting scent of old books and the soft whispers of turning pages. It was in these solitary moments that their connection began to transcend the camaraderie of colleagues, revealing the deeper chords of a romance that was both enchanting and earnest. As Eliza recited her favorite lines of poetry, her voice carrying the verses with a tender cadence, James would listen with an admiration that glinted in his eyes like the first light of dawn. He, in turn, would regale her with stories from history, tales that came alive with his impassioned narrative, weaving a vivid tapestry of moments that bridged the past and present. Each story, each recitation, was more than just an exchange of words. It was a glimpse into their hearts, a testament to the quiet yet profound understanding that was taking root between them. Outside the confines of their professional lives, they discovered shared joys that painted their connection with the hues of something more than friendship. Mornings spent at the local cafe became a cherished ritual where laughter flowed as easily as the coffee that warmed their hands, a respite from the world where time seemed to slow, allowing them to bask in the simplicity of each other's company. On weekends, their adventures often led them beyond the city, exploring trails and parks where the beauty of nature mirrored the blossoming of their own relationship. These moments, filled with sunlight and laughter, were the building blocks of a bond that seemed as pure as the first note of a spring bird's song. In these spaces, away from the watchful eyes of the school corridors, their budding romance unfolded naturally, like a flower unfurling its petals to the gentle touch of the morning sun. It was a connection that seemed enviable in its purity, woven together with threads of shared dreams and soft-spoken promises that lingered in the air like an unending melody. Yet beneath the surface of this idyllic picture, an unseen thread of destiny lay coiled, waiting to unravel as their narrative journeyed into deeper, darker waters. The first signs of obsession appeared as faint ripples in the tranquil pond of their relationship. The once harmonious exchanges between Eliza and James began to tilt ever so slightly as small, almost imperceptible changes etched their way into the fabric of their interactions. It was James who found himself increasingly drawn towards Eliza with an intensity that edged beyond the usual bounds of affection. At first, it was just an extra glance held a beat longer, a lingering look that seemed to search for something unsaid. Friends noticed how his stories, once filled with diverse figures and events, began featuring Eliza as a recurrent character. It was subtle, woven seamlessly into his narratives, yet to those paying attention, Her presence was unmistakably frequent. During staff meetings, James seemed distracted, his gaze often drifting toward where Eliza sat, as if tethered by an invisible thread. He began orchestrating ways to intersect his schedule with hers, arriving early to ensure their paths crossed more often in hallways or shared spaces. Their shared lunch breaks, that had once felt spontaneous, now seemed more like carefully curated encounters. Colleagues initially dismissed these changes as the usual intensity of growing romance. Yet beneath the surface, something was shifting. Eliza, wrapped in her own affection, remained unaware of the emerging depth of James's focus. He began to notice details about her life that even her closest friends might not pick up on. A new pair of earrings, a slight change in a choice of coffee. Gestures of kindness turned into quiet acts of surveillance as he observed and memorized each aspect of her being. Even in the comfort of the library, where they'd shared so many harmonious evenings, James started framing conversations to elicit more personal details about Eliza's past and dreams. His questions, though gentle and curious, carried an urgency that whispered of a desire to delve deeper into territories that perhaps only Eliza should own. It was a subtle shift, a thread of obsession slowly woven into the tapestry of their romance, still too fine to draw concern, yet enough to hint at the darker paths their narrative might tread. The escalation of obsession took root quietly, creeping through the shadowed corners of their relationship like a vine determined to obscure the light. James's infatuation, once a flickering warmth, grew into an all-consuming flame, casting long shadows over every facet of their connection. It wasn't long before his fascination with Eliza began to step over healthy boundaries, introducing a tension palpable even to those on the periphery of their world. One evening, as the twilight sky painted the horizon in hues of dusk, James found himself standing outside Eliza's home, a place he'd visited during daylight under the invitation of her warm hospitality. But that evening, cloaked in night's embrace, he was drawn not by an invitation, but by an unquenchable need to be near her, to assure himself of her presence beyond the professional rapport they shared. His heart beat in a rhythm that matched the whispers of the night, and a chill coursed through his veins as he realized his presence there was not one of a welcomed guest, but of an unseen observer. Back at school, the escalation was marked by a subtle yet undeniable change in James's demeanor. His once vibrant stories began to carry an edge, his laughter a hollow echo of the joy it once celebrated. He left little notes for Eliza, tucked into the pages of her favorite books or slipped into her bags. These were not the sweet tokens of early courtship, but messages that carried an intensity, urging her to think of him during her every waking moment. The sentiments within were suffocating in their fervor, illuminating the growing disparity between mutual affection and solitary fixation. Colleagues began to notice the strain, whispering in hushed tones about the unmistakable tension that had woven its way into the fabric of their interactions. For Eliza, moments once filled with warmth now carried an undercurrent of unease. It's as if the very air shared between them crackled with unsaid words, with an awareness of James's overstepping in ways she couldn't quite place. There were times when she'd catch him watching her with an intensity that felt like a spotlight under which she unwittingly performed. Her heart, once light with the thrill of a burgeoning romance, now carried a weight, an unease that colored her days with shades of apprehension. And through it all, James, caught in the tangled vines of his obsession, failed to see the shadows lengthening over their love. Each step deeper into this entanglement was a step away from the innocence they'd once cherished, creating a rift that grew with each passing day, leading their story towards an uncertain precipice. The strain of James's growing obsession soon became too heavy a burden, casting a shadow over the bright beginnings of their romance. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, manifesting in curt exchanges and guarded glances, a far cry from the easy affection that had once defined their bond. It was during a faculty meeting that the first public cracks appeared, a gathering meant for routine discussions, but which quickly turned into a stage for unspoken grievances to surface. As Eliza presented her ideas on a new joint project, James interrupted, his voice tinged with a possessiveness that caught the room's attention. He questioned her proposals with an intensity that felt disproportionate, drawing murmurs from their colleagues and a look of confusion from Eliza. The air in the room thickened as each word seemed to carry the weight of unvoiced emotions. Eliza, maintaining her composure, attempted to address his concerns, but underneath her calm demeanor lay a growing awareness of the shift in their dynamics. James's insistence on controlling the narrative, once charming in its enthusiasm, felt stifling now, a bind that threatened the very core of their collaborative spirit. Outside the confines of structured meetings, their personal conversations also took on a sharper edge. An evening intended for discussing student projects veered into unfamiliar territory. Frustration seeped into their dialogue as Eliza questioned James's increasing presence outside of work, her voice wavering between concern and assertiveness. His responses, laced with defensiveness, revealed the insecurity festering beneath his confident exterior. It was during this confrontation that Eliza first realized the depth of James's obsession, a realization that came with a pang of fear. A fear not just for the erosion of their friendship, but for the unpredictable trajectory ahead. The confrontation marked a pivotal turning point, a moment where the idyllic facade of their relationship crumbled to reveal the tangled emotions beneath. For James, the night was a spiral, each moment pulling him deeper into the realm of desperation, while for Eliza, it was a stark awakening to the perils lurking within their once innocent connection. This shift exposed the fault lines in their bond, drawing a line in the sand that neither could ignore any longer. It was a moment that ushered them into uncharted waters, setting the stage for the unraveling of all that had been cherished and pure. As the echoes of their discord faded, it left them both standing on the precipice of a relationship that had irrevocably changed, casting long shadows over the path they once walked with such joy. Isolation and manipulation crept insidiously into the folds of James's actions, transforming the atmosphere of the once vibrant halls into a landscape of suspicion and estrangement. The shared laughter and camaraderie that had once been the hallmark of Eliza and James's connection now seemed like distant echoes as James's obsession deepened into something far more controlling. His presence, once a source of comfort, became an all-encompassing shadow, casting a pall over their interactions. James began orchestrating subtle shifts in their shared environment, insinuating himself deeper into Eliza's life while trying to isolate her from those around her. He started to manipulate their schedules, ensuring Eliza's time was monopolized by their interactions under the guise of collaboration on school projects. At first, it was just an extra meeting here and there, but his insistence grew, pulling Eliza away from her usual social circles and grounding her within a sphere he could control. Among colleagues, James's behavior became increasingly possessive. He would subtly undermine Eliza's achievements, sowing seeds of doubt about her capabilities among peers, all while maintaining a facade of support. His manipulations were crafted with an expertise that allowed him to slide under the radar, unnoticed by all but those closest to the fray. The isolation was gradual but effective, creating an invisible barrier not only between Eliza and her colleagues, but between James and the world that had once embraced him openly. His obsessive focus on Eliza strained his relationships with other staff, leading to whispered conversations and sidelong glances in the corridors. The warmth that once characterized his interactions with his peers waned, replaced by a tension that permeated the fabric of their professional lives. Those who were once friends began distancing themselves, sensing the possessiveness that now defined James's demeanor. Eliza, caught in the web of manipulation, began to feel the isolation taking root. The energetic exchanges she had once thrived on were replaced by a pervasive unease, as if her every move was being scrutinized through James's intense gaze. It was a shift that left her feeling adrift, cut off from the support networks that had enriched her life beyond the confines of the school. The rift between them widened as James's obsession unfurled like a dark bloom, drawing him deeper into a solitude of his own making. As he withdrew further from those who cared for him, the obsession's grip tightened, leaving him isolated in the shadowed corridors of his own design, standing on the precipice of a dangerous precipice from which there seemed no return. This manipulation and isolation not only fractured their bond, but cast them into isolated worlds spiraling ever further apart, setting the stage for the tragic downfall that was waiting in the wings. The breaking point was a culmination that unfolded with the same inevitability as shadows lengthening at dusk. It began with small incidents so seemingly innocuous that their gravity only revealed itself in hindsight. One such moment occurred on a dreary Tuesday afternoon, when Eliza returned to her classroom after the final bell, only to find it transformed into a shrine of unsettling devotion. Her desk, once a place of orderly serenity, was strewn with tokens of affection that blurred the line between thoughtful and intrusive. Flowers, each petal painstakingly pressed, lay interspersed with carefully penned letters, their contents a tapestry of admiration and veiled possession. The words, though eloquent, carried an urgency that made her heart race with a mixture of fear and disbelief. It was as if James had poured the very essence of his obsession into each phrase, the ink an extension of his fervent fixation. This unsettling discovery was the first fissure, a crack that heralded the unraveling of the threadbare fabric of their relationship. It was followed by an encounter in the dimly lit library where James, once a source of warmth, now seemed a figure carved from shadow. His attempts to engage Eliza in conversation were laced with an intensity that felt suffocating, his eyes searching hers for a connection that had long since withered. He spoke of visions, of a future entwined only with her, painting pictures of a life unspooled from the threads of reality. Eliza, enveloped by a rising tide of unease, began to sense the precariousness of her situation, the very air around them charged with a tension that crackled like distant thunder. It was during one of these encounters that James's desperation reached an apex, his words spilling out in a torrent that brooked neither interruption nor escape. The library, once a sanctuary, became a stage for a confrontation that teetered on the brink of something more ominous. James's voice, usually a gentle cadence, now trembled with a raw edge, each syllable a plea for understanding, a demand for acknowledgement of a future only he envisioned. Eliza, caught in the storm of his obsession, felt the fraying edges of her reality unraveling, her protests swallowed by the depth of his fixation. As the school corridors echoed with the fading footsteps of students, James's behavior took on an urgency that felt like the last gasp of a drowning man. He began to appear at every place Eliza frequented, his presence a constant, foreboding shadow that trailed her every move. Friends who had once played silent observers to their unfolding romance now became silent witnesses to the tension that threatened to breach the dam of normalcy. The culmination of these events led to a final confrontation, one where the veneer of civility shattered under the weight of unspoken truths. It was during a routine school function, a gathering that should have been a celebration of achievement, that the facade finally collapsed. As Eliza mingled with colleagues, striving to maintain an air of normality amidst the chaos enveloping her personal life, James approached with a singular resolve etched into his features. His demeanor, once charming, now bore the marks of an inflexible determination bordering on madness. The conversation that ensued was a tempest. Words volleyed in a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm that had grown between them. Yet with each exchange, it became increasingly evident that James was beyond the reach of reason, his mind ensnared by the obsession that had come to define his every waking moment. The breaking point arrived not with a roar, but with a whisper, a fleeting moment when Eliza recognized the futility of her resistance, a terrifying acknowledgement of how far beyond friendship their entanglement had become. This realization illuminated the path leading to their tragic destiny, casting a long shadow over the events yet to unfold, the foreboding crescendo of a tale poised on the edge of disaster. The unraveling of James's mental state was a gradual descent into a chasm that had been forming beneath the surface, widening with every silent moment and unspoken fear. It was a path marked by overlooked warning signs that, in hindsight, loomed like blaring signals, too easily dismissed in the ordinary hum of daily life. From the outside, James's demeanor initially betrayed little of the internal chaos that was surreptitiously eroding his sense of reality. His charismatic facade, once an endearing quality, masked the storm that raged underneath, a tempest of emotions that festered in the solitude of his thoughts. But those around him began to notice the subtle shifts, the once vibrant light in his eyes, now dimmed by an ever-present shadow of unease. His jovial narratives, the tales that once bound him to his students with infectious enthusiasm, gradually turned fragmented, tinged with an underlying melancholy that seemed out of place. He became increasingly withdrawn, his laughter echoing like a hollow spectre of what it used to be, a distant memory of the warmth that had once defined his presence among his peers. James's interactions bore the marks of a man at war with himself, an internal struggle that played out in the way he grappled with his own thoughts, visible only to those who dared to look beyond the surface. Yet it was in the reflective glances and unguarded moments when his internal turmoil fleetingly surfaced, a furrowing of his brow, a tension in his shoulders, that his colleagues sensed the fractures forming within. It was during one of those solitary evenings that James found himself alone in the dim light of his study, surrounded by the silent witnesses of his obsession, notes, letters, and relics of his fixation on Eliza. each one a reminder of how tightly the threads of his reality had been bound to her existence. In that solitude, the weight of his unraveling became inescapable, leaving him haunted by the very shadows of his own creation. The psychological grip of his obsession twisted his perception, bending the boundaries between desire and possession until they disintegrated into a singular, consuming need. The emotional tumult held him captive, a prisoner to the relentless tide of longing and despair that pulled him further from the shores of sanity. Each passing day brought him closer to an irreversible decision, carved from the depths of his fractured state of mind. James's world constricted around him, narrowing his vision until the scope of his existence fixated solely on the impossible image of a life intertwined with Eliza. His thoughts wove a narrative of inevitability, an inescapable trajectory crafted by the very words and imaginations that once brought him joy. The unraveling threaded itself through his actions, propelling him towards a precipice from which there was no return, the final act of a tragic tale set in motion by the unchecked waves of obsession. The crime unfolded on a somber evening, the tranquility of the night shattered by an act that forever changed the fabric of those who knew Eliza and James. In the shadows of the school building, where echoes of children's laughter once danced across the corridors, a sobering silence fell as the fateful event transpired. It was here, amidst the familiar surroundings that had borne witness to their budding romance, that the narrative took its darkest turn. As the evening breeze whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of blooming jasmine, James found himself standing at the crossroads of obsession and desperation. Overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions, he confronted Eliza with a resolve that had been building, a tempest that had been brewing unnoticed in the crevices of his mind. What began as a plea for understanding swiftly spiraled into a confrontation laden with uncontainable fervor. Eliza, now acutely aware of the gravity of the situation, faced James with a calm exterior that belied the fear rippling beneath her surface. Her attempts to diffuse the escalating tension were met with an intensity that left no room for retreat. It was in this charged atmosphere that the boundaries between love and obsession blurred irrevocably. The words exchanged between them were a cacophony of emotion, with James's pleas entwined with the desperation of a man clinging to the remnants of a dream that had unraveled long ago. In a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the space between them became a chasm bridged by actions no one could have foreseen. The profound tragedy lay not only in the act itself, but in the realization that love, once tender and pure, had turned into a force that brought about such irreversible harm. The impact of that night rippled through the community, leaving behind a tapestry of disbelief and grief. Those who had known them, who had witnessed the beauty of their initial connection, struggled to reconcile the joyful memories with the harrowing reality now etched into their lives. The school, once a haven of learning and growth, became a silent testament to the fragility of human passion, unchecked. As sirens pierced the stillness, signaling the arrival of law enforcement and emergency services, the somber truth settled over all who had been touched by their story. What remained was a profound loss, a void left by the absence of two souls whose paths had intertwined in both destiny and tragedy. In the hearts of those who remained, the evening stood as a somber reminder of the delicate line between love and obsession, a call for reflection on the choices that lead to such irreversible consequences. The tale of Eliza and James, marked by its poignant beginning and devastating conclusion, served as a testament to the complexities of human emotion and the unforeseen paths upon which they may lead. The aftermath of the tragic event unfolded in a wave of disbelief and sorrow that rippled through the tight-knit community like a storm sweeping across a calm sea. Shock anchored itself in the hearts of neighbors, colleagues, and students who had known Eliza and James as beloved members of their world, leaving an indelible mark on all who had witnessed their story. Among the fellow educators, whispers of astonishment coursed through the faculty rooms, each conversation wrapped with an air of incredulity. For many who had shared jovial banter and professional camaraderie with Eliza and James, the reality of the situation felt removed from the realm of possibility. Those who had seen them interact, the warmth, the laughter, struggled to reconcile the past joy with the grim truth now laid bare. The corridors of the school, once vibrant with the hum of youthful energy, echoed with a somber silence, as if even the walls lamented the loss of innocence. Students old enough to comprehend the gravity of the situation grappled with confusion, their young minds wrestling with the notion that the very teachers who had inspired and guided them were entwined in such a tragic narrative. Candles flickered in vigil outside the school gates as flowers and handwritten notes began to pile up, a poignant tribute to lives intertwined in both warmth and tragedy. Parents stood shoulder to shoulder, offering comfort to one another as they grappled with questions that seemed to have no answers, their hearts heavy with sorrow for young lives touched by this darkness. In the wider community, the shock was palpable, a collective mourning unfurling like a blanket over the town. Those who had crossed paths with Eliza or James at the local cafe or bookshop found themselves caught in a web of shared memories now tinged with melancholy. The sense of loss extended beyond the immediate circle, binding individuals together in a shared experience of grief. Authorities, tasked with piecing together the events of that fateful night, approached the situation with the gravity it deserved. Investigations began, weaving through the fabric of narratives and evidence as they sought to understand the catalyst that had transformed love into tragedy. Press conferences were held, with officials urging for patience, their faces lined with the weight of the community's expectations. Through it all, the media presence hovered at the edges, capturing the public's attention with headlines that sought to unravel the tale. The search for answers mingled with the community's need for healing, highlighting the complexity of emotions ignited by the situation. As days turned into weeks, the narrative of Eliza and James's story became one of caution, a reminder of the unpredictable nature of human emotions and the importance of recognizing the signs that precede such tragedy. In the hearts of those left behind, the aftermath stood as a tapestry woven with memories of joy and sorrow, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the dark paths that unchecked emotions can carve. It was a time when the community came together, leaning on one another for strength and understanding, and began to forge a path towards healing in the shadow of a story that would echo in their hearts for years to come. The legal proceedings began in the hushed corridors of the courthouse, a venue now charged with the weight of a community seeking closure and justice. The atmosphere was palpable with anticipation as the trial of James Monroe commenced, drawing in those who had been touched by the tragic narrative of obsession turned deadly. The courtroom became a stage where the intricate threads of emotion and evidence intertwined, each day revealing layers of a story that needed to be understood and adjudicated. As the trial unfolded, The prosecution methodically laid out the sequence of events leading to the tragic night, painting a poignant picture of the descent from love to obsession. Witnesses were called to testify, their voices adding color and depth to the narrative that had gripped the community. Colleagues and friends of Eliza recounted the subtle shifts in behavior that had signaled James's growing fixation. Their testimonies, though tinged with sorrow, provided the context necessary to understand the progression of his obsession. The defense, in turn, sought to portray James as a man overtaken by emotions beyond his control, grappling with the internal turmoil that had driven him to the edge. It was a strategy that sought to elicit empathy for a man whose life unraveled in the shadow of unrequited love. Yet it also served to remind those present of the stark realities of unchecked passion. Throughout the proceedings, the courtroom drama unfolded with moments of intense emotion. Key highlights included the presentation of evidence that detailed James's movements and actions leading up to the fateful confrontation, each detail unraveling the path that led to the irreversible act. Expert witnesses analyzed James's mental state, offering insights into the psychological grip that had compelled him towards tragedy. The jury, a cross-section of the community, listened intently, their expressions reflecting the weight of the decision that lay before them. As the closing arguments were presented, both sides imparted their final plea for justice, one for the victim, whose life was prematurely taken, and the other for a defendant ensnared in the complexities of human emotion. The judge's instructions to the jury echoed through the room, urging them to consider the evidence with both empathy and fairness. As the jury retired to deliberate, the courtroom held its collective breath, each member acutely aware of the historical significance of the verdict. When the decision was finally rendered, it echoed through the silence, a conviction that underscored the finality of a tale that began with innocent affection but ended in tragedy. The verdict was a moment of closure for many, a tangible acknowledgement of the journey from love to obsession and the irrevocable harm left in its wake. Justice was served for Eliza, a final chapter in a story that had touched the hearts of all who heard it. The trial concluded, leaving behind a community forever changed, their reflections on the proceedings a reminder of the delicate balance between passion and reason, and the profound consequences when that balance is lost. Reflecting on the tragic events that unfolded between Eliza and James, we are reminded of the fragile nature of human emotions, the fine line between love and obsession. This poignant tale invites us to consider the small moments that, if approached differently, might have altered their trajectory. One crucial insight is the importance of recognizing the early signs of obsession. In the initial stages, what appears as deep affection can quietly shift into something more intense, a fixation that blurs boundaries and distorts reality. It's vital to acknowledge these shifts, whether it's an increased need for control, an overwhelming intensity in interactions, or an irrational preoccupation with the other person's life. Awareness is key. Educators, colleagues, friends, and family members serve as the first line of support, and being attuned to these subtle changes can offer a lifeline to those caught in the throes of unhealthy love. Open communication and the establishment of healthy boundaries are instrumental in navigating relationships, ensuring that both parties feel secure and respected. For those who find themselves in relationships that teeter on the edge of obsession, reaching out for help can be a pivotal step. Therapists and counselors provide not just a listening ear, but the tools necessary to unpack these feelings and redirect them healthily. Communities and institutions must also play a proactive role in offering resources and fostering environments where individuals feel safe to express their emotions without fear of judgment. The story of Eliza and James is a stark reminder of the consequences when ignored warning signs are left to fester. It's a call to action for all of us to be vigilant, to listen with empathy, and to act with compassion when we sense something is amiss. By recognizing and addressing these signs early, we cultivate relationships that thrive on mutual respect and understanding, safeguarding against the perilous descent into obsession. As we ponder this narrative, let us carry forward these lessons, not only as a tribute to the lives affected, but as a commitment to fostering healthier, more supportive connections in our own lives. In summary, the tragic tale of Eliza and James serves as a vivid reminder of how an innocent love can spiral into a consuming obsession, leading to unintended and devastating consequences. From the gentle beginnings of a classroom friendship, marked by shared passions and mutual respect, their connection seemed destined for something beautiful. Yet, as the shadows of obsession crept in, the boundaries of their relationship blurred, unraveling into a narrative that transformed love into a force that ultimately destroyed. As we reflect on this poignant story, it compels us to consider the real-life implications of unchecked emotions and the fragility of human connections. It drives home the importance of recognizing early warning signs and taking steps to nurture relationships with care and respect. Let this narrative be a call for awareness, reminding us to remain vigilant and empathetic in our own interactions, ensuring that love remains a source of light and not a catalyst for darkness. As we ponder these events, we are left with a question to deeply consider. How can we safeguard our own connections from crossing the perilous line between affection and obsession? With this reflection, let us strive to create a world where love is celebrated for its purity, steering clear of the shadows that can so easily ensnare the unwary. If you found this story thought-provoking, consider subscribing to our channel for more tales that delve into the mysteries of the human heart, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our latest uploads.